to the Transform podcast series, hosted by Vercium, a learning and development organisation specialising in medical affairs. Each episode, we will explore different topics with our Vercium team and expert guests to bring you the latest thinking in learning and development. Today's episode features special guest and medical affairs professional Pamela Graas, and we will be discussing the insights journey within pharmaceutical companies from field medical to utilisation in clinical research.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Vercium podcast, and today I've got with me none other than Pamela Graas, who is a global medical excellence professional and has been so for 10 years. And today's podcast is about the insights journey in medical. And Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lee. Hi, everyone.
It's great to have you. So Pam, we've had some interesting conversations prior to this podcast about the insights journey. And what we'd like to get out of this podcast today for our listeners is what the insights journey is, the difficulties within that, and the purpose of the insights journey, and how to make that as effective as possible. So what do you see the insights journey purpose being within the corporate medical world?
So I really think that insights should be at least at the center of all decisions, because the insights are really informing the medical strategy, and hence insights are improving patient outcomes. Eventually, patient should be put at the center of all the decisions. And because medical is intervening so early into the life cycle management of a product, then definitely insights are a core medical currency. And it's really demonstrating the value of medical, because medical can then really understand the treatment and the disease landscape early on, and inform the strategy and the tactics that are used to eventually improve the patient lives.
So there's quite a few steps to that insights journey, isn't there? There's the area which my team are largely focused in, which is that insights generation, it's often called. So that field medical perspective in terms of identifying and capturing the insights. And then there's a whole stage of several different stages before it becomes something that's able to be utilized for that research purposes. Do you want to just take us through what some of them steps may be, Pam?
Yeah, so I think that first there are three main pillars to be identified in this whole insight generation journey. Those pillars being the process. So as you mentioned, this cycle, the resources that are put into the process, the way it's structured. Then you have the capabilities, so how people are trained on spotting observation that might lead to insights, and also how they can eventually collect those actionable insights, which are the really holy grail of any insight generation journey. And finally, you have the platform. So I think that the process and the capabilities are probably what should be put up front in order to support a good use of a platform. And what I've been noticing in many companies and in many roles I had is that the platform is usually put at the center of the whole journey, whilst I think it's probably not the best way to approach insight generation. Then into the cycle that you mentioned, we have indeed this kind of insight generation phase. So mainly field medical driven through unsolicited scientific exchanges. Then you have the whole probably storage and management of those insights. So how to analyze those, how to make suggestions out of those. And probably this stays, at least at first, within medical. So it's a real cross-functional medical conversation that is happening there. Then when medical people have been aggregating those data and also coming up with some recommendation, actionable recommendation. Then these go out into the cross-functional team, so broader team, mainly franchise head, brand manager, access and value. After also compliance review to be sure to share the insight that can be shared.
Yeah.
Then there is this bit of the insights informing the strategy and the tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, and probably that's also a component that is often missing in this cycle, is the bit where after the strategy and tactics have been informed, maybe changed, maybe tweaked, update, to have this feedback loop closed towards the field medical persons who have been like generating those insights at first, to create a real cycle so that everyone can benefit the insight, but also mainly it's in order to keep the motivation of the field medical people so that they know that their work has been valued, has been useful, and that they get the feedback around what has been done with the insight they collected.
Wow. So even now I'm learning more insights about insights. There's so many moving parts, isn't there? And I've always seen insights in its simplest form as an input-output model without thinking about those individual components. And it would appear that each stage has got to be managed extremely carefully. Like you say, there's a lot of emphasis on the platform, and I'm imagining that's because there's a lot of resource and finances go into that. And then there's the piece at the end where there's that feedback loop, as you mentioned, for the field medical for that input piece. So they realize that what they're doing is of value, and then that would impinge on their purpose. And that's where obviously my team work, and that's what we see. We see there's more emphasis, there's more focus on and capabilities aligned to the data dissemination rather than, how are you getting your insights? Do you have this deep curiosity to find out what's happening in the field? And actually they should be working together with, utilizing that data appropriately to discover insights. And so do you think that is because there is more emphasis? I'm making the assumption here because that's what I see, but do you feel there is more emphasis on data dissemination, or is there something else? Is it a lack of capabilities or a lack of understanding of what high value insights is at that front end, which is affecting what's happening at the back end? And obviously it's a loop. So what are your thoughts there in terms of what I've just said around that piece in terms of the focus at the front end from the field medical guys?
Yeah, you're right. I think that many people working in this field have been drawing the same conclusion, or at least observing the same things as the one you just highlighted. I think that there are two root causes to that. Probably the first one being that because of the nature of the MSL role, or any customer-facing role within medical, because of the unsolicited nature of that, and because of the scientific exchange, I think that a lot of emphasis is put into this data dissemination, scientific exchange bit. Probably the second root cause would be that there is sometimes strategy can be seen as being very commercial by medical people. So I think that it's probably something a bit more difficult sometimes for medical people to have the strategy top of mind when discussing those, when having those scientific exchanges, to be able to then gather insights that could match potentially or give information regarding the current strategy or the current tactics. Secondly, I think that when you master all the data that you are presenting in front of HCPs, because you are a scientist in nature, like physician, PhD, veterinarian, whatever. It feels really comfortable to present data.
Mm-hmm.
It probably feels less comfortable also giving the very analytic nature of most of the medical people to dive into the unknown, to practice active listening, and to be surprised, because by practicing the active listening, by raising some really deep question, then you don't know what you might get. Probably very, very nice insights, probably very actionable insights if you dive deep enough. But also you are not really you're not really controlling what you might get out of those
Okay.
question rising.
So it sounds like the mindset of the field medical person involved in these exchanges is key. So there may be a bit of fear and need to control, fear in terms of being associated with industry, or the strategy associated to industry. May be that there's a label that they get which is commercial, and also the readiness to stay in the comfort zone. And I think often what I see is that's driven by a desire to add value, because if they think that the value is in the data. And I think that's a mistake that's often made by people in medical, and often people new to medical often add a lot of value because they don't know the data well enough, and they focus on the relationship, and they focus on acquiring knowledge from the thought leaders, from the healthcare professionals. And actually that tends to afford new levels of thinking for the HCP, and that dialogue in itself is valuable. So how do we get over that? Is the feedback loop part of the answer, reinforcing that? How do we get over that mindset for field medical to have more and higher value insights rather than 80 to 90% of that interaction being about sharing the data and presenting?
Yeah. So first, I'd like to bounce upon what you just mentioned about the desire to add value, because that's exactly how I'm analyzing this. I think that many medical colleagues, they're solution finders, and they want to help the physicians solve problems or issues. And as soon as they are kind of identifying some of the issues, they are really offering like a armamentarium of solutions to be able to be of help. Yeah. So yeah, I think the underlying cause of that is probably them wanting to be valuable and to add value to the interaction. I think that the capability building initiatives are helping in terms of changing mindset, but also in terms of people noticing how they can be useful by just raising questions, because then they will get to a new level of understanding of what the issue is or what the issues are. And then they will be able to come up with new solutions to even further help the physician. This comes with punctual, or maybe once a year, capability building training, but also, and I just got a nice example about one of the countries presenting their insight generation journey. And according to the person who presented the project, they set up a process, right? They are sticking to this process. This process is person independent, like it's function dependent. So it's the medical advisor, MSL, working on the project. It's not, XYZ working on the project. And also capability building. So they are organizing workshop. Yes, that is true. Probably once or twice a year. But then here, the lead of the project was really presenting the the crucial role of the MSL managers, because those MSL managers or whomever is shadowing MSLs in the field or coaching the MSLs is putting the emphasis on some of the practices that he wants to see being emphasized. So if the MSL manager sees a behavior that he'd like or she'd like to nurture, then of course the coaching will go in this direction. So probably not just one-shot capability building are enough. I really believe in the power of coaching and of repeating those capability building initiatives, or at least moments.
I think capabilities are one thing. I think you touched on something, coaching, because coaching is different from obviously a capabilities workshop. It's working with the individual to elicit positive change. And what I'm getting here is a barrier to positive change, which was something you mentioned earlier, was that I don't know if fear is the right word, but desire not to be associated to industry. Let's call it that for now. It's probably not the best phrase, but or desire not to be deemed as commercial, and therefore don't want to do certain things and just want to present data to distance themselves from that. So is that something that you've seen that has been directly addressed, that mindset? I feel it, I hear it, and I see it, and I see the evidence of the behaviors that suggest that that's a driver. And you've obviously experienced it too. Has anyone really hit that head on and in any way for you, whether it's been in coaching, in capabilities, or a line management discussion?
Yes. Yes. So
what happens then when that happens, when people are, because it's kind of a subconscious thing, isn't it? Almost, it's almost, I'm not deliberately holding myself back, but there is something that is stopping that output that we want, that performance that's needed to have them really robust conversations around medicine.
Yeah, I think what is helping alleviating that, and also making the barriers less strong about those commercial behaviors is probably to have those project related conversation with physicians. So yes, you do have the unsolicited scientific exchanges, but then when it comes to projects, you can contact the physician, you can propose new solutions, and also by having the constraint of the project or the scope of the project to have those discussions is probably a bit less stringent than having the pure scientific exchange around the latest phase 3 data. So I really think that the room provided by a scope of a project is encouraging people to not to be just in the data dissemination, but truly to understand how they can support the physician in order to help, because eventually we are coming back to I want to be of value, I want to offer my help, I want to be solution driven. Then you can be solution driven, but in the scope of a project, which is totally putting some frame around the interaction, but probably giving you enough space to have those conversations, to raise those questions, to listen to what the physician has to say, or to observe what the physician has to go through in his or her daily life. So probably the setting is alleviating that a bit. That's what I experience, and that's what I saw the other experiencing as well.
Yeah, I also think I would, and I've seen that when people are associated to a project, they almost piggyback on the value of that package. I think there was the word you used of that project, but that is still an external factor. And I think people who work in medical are intelligent people, and the data says that 90% of people who are classified as intelligent suffer with imposter syndrome. And there's something that I always face when we get to people on the cutting edge of their capabilities, which is what's stopping you. And it's that, well, am I good enough? Do I add value? And I think adding value to external factors is useful, but there's also got to be some value in you, in your curiosity, your desire, what you bring, what you want to do as an output in terms of creating something that's useful for that next generation of medicine research. So coming away from the field medical and their capabilities, you mentioned earlier about the platform, and you were saying that there's a lot of emphasis on the platform, and I've had very limited experience and exposure to some of the platforms, and when I have, I've been quite not shocked, but surprised, I think is a better word, in terms of what it can and can't capture. So often what I find gets lost when I look at the platform is people type in what happened, but the context is missing, such as the how you think the physician felt, or the context, or this is what happened before. It's just almost these were the outputs. And without that context, which provides so much meaning, I'm not sure a lot of the insights that are captured on the platforms I've seen are then adequately represented further down that insights process. And I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, Pam.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Although I'm not a platform specialist, but I've seen enough of them to know that people are presenting the platforms are usually very gifted at presenting all the features of the platform. So yeah, it's very hype, and I fully understand that you get totally drawn into wanting to have this platform too. I understand that we have to use a platform because of the pharmacovigilance issues that might arise during the conversation, because of the quality issues that might arise too, because also of the audit trail, because of the GDPR in as a whole. So I understand that there is a legal and regulatory framework where we have to operate, hence the platform is useful. I'm not saying, sometimes I'm provocative and I'm saying, is that even useful? It is for those features. For the insight generation journey as it is, I'm still wondering whether it's useful. So, because I think that you were talking about context. I think that right now, what I haven't seen in any of the platforms I've been, attending a demo of or using even, is the analytical bit. Yes, you have an analytical feature for most of the data that are present into the platform, but as you mentioned, it's not giving any context around those data that were entered on the platform. It's probably what people are seeking, because they want to use that as a repository for all the legal and regulatory reasons, but they want also to analyze that easily. What I see more and more in my daily life when I'm talking with the regions and the countries, be that small countries or big countries, is that most of them are now setting up strong processes around putting up meetings where medical will understand and will listen to the customer facing function, and they will say, okay, you've been to this doctor, what was the context and how did you have this kind of conversation, to really try to not only understand the observation, how this can be translated into an actionable insight, but really to understand more about the context. So yeah, what I'm seeing right now is that you have a platform that serves as a repository, and then you have the human component where the analysis is still taking place within teams, where people are still trying to understand the whole context and to see how they can aggregate those data and find the solutions that are the best addressing the trends they are seeing.
Yeah, it's almost like the qualitative information associated to that meeting sort of disappears or dilutes the further down the line it goes. And from what I've seen and what you're saying, it sounds like many local teams are taking their own initiative to implement some kind of activity or exercise or process that makes sure that what they've gathered, what the value they've created at the front end of that insights process is retained throughout the process, and therefore you get better outputs. Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? Because often when one of the things myself or the team would ask individuals in workshops or in coaching sessions is their understanding of what a high value insight is. And I would say, as a rough guess, I'd say 10 to 20% of people understand what high value insight is. And I mean, I could go into what we do, but I don't think that would be insightful. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Is it our guys just hearing that in a workshop? Is that an accurate representation of what you see within industry in terms of that understanding of what they're looking for?
Yes. Yeah, so understanding of what they're looking for is one of the components when it comes to insights, because I think we can kind of park insights into two big categories. The one that are totally related to your strategic imperatives, like you're just finding something that you've been seeking. So yeah, you'd like to understand more about the treatment and the line of treatment for potential patients, and because it's in your strategic imperative, so you get an answer for what you've been looking for. And then you have those kind of serendipity findings where people are just not waiting for it, but then they are all of a sudden discovering like something really interesting that is maybe not in line with the strategic imperative. So I think it takes like two brains or two sides of your brains to be very mindful of the strategy and what is also guiding the questions you are raising, because you are into the scientific exchange. And yes, you have to understand your strategy and how this could feed into your strategy, your medical strategy, of course. And then you have to have your very curious side of you that is open to the unknown, open to discover something that you're not prepared to discover. So that's probably the having those two siloed part of your brains working all together to be aligned with the medical strategy and curious also all at once.
We talk about this a lot, and there is I think a mindset shift. You have that strategic mindset, which is it's a type of curiosity. It's looking for something specific, and it's epistemic curiosity. We're going in and we're looking for something. So we're looking, and we use the analogy of behind value, which is treasure hunting. And so if you're looking for gold, you're going to find gold, but in this huge pile of dirt behind you while you're looking for this yellow soft metal, there might be diamonds and emeralds that you've missed because you're looking for what you're looking for. So there's a switch of mindset, which is a different type of curiosity, which is perceptual curiosity, which is more childlike, open-minded. And I like to call it perceptual and perpetual, because I think you almost just have to let go. There's almost like a letting go of what you want and what you need and the business strategy. Yeah, you have to have that as a framework for the conversation. But then there's also that giving them the space, allowing, and so creating the environment for these high value insights to exist. And I think that is a skill, but I think it's often misunderstood by not just field medical, but field medical leaders. And therefore insights generally can be misrepresented in terms, so people sometimes don't know what they're looking for or how to look for it. It's quite a fascinating subject area, isn't it? Really, once you get into it, it really is.
It is.
So go ahead.
If I may add upon that, because that's also something I see happening, and I saw that happening in previous organization, is the lack of resources dedicated to the analysis bit. Because when you meet X KOL per day, week, and then ending up with X or Y KOL visits per month, and you have like, I don't know, 80% of your interaction which have been insightful. So you have like this amount of data to analyze, and probably the medical lead or whoever, medical manager, whoever is in charge of analyzing those, that will take time just for the analysis, but then for the discussion to get more about the context and in which conversation this kind of insight happened or were discussed. So not only is it taking curiosity from the customer-facing medical functions, but it's also taking a lot of resources from the office-based medical colleagues dealing with those insights. So I think that insights are key. Sometimes not all the resources are put behind setting up a strong insight generation journey.
Yeah, I think we're seeing something similar, but also seeing something quite good. So I am seeing, when we work with quite a number of the top 10 pharma clients, I think globally, they might not be in the top 10 now, but what we've seen is there is a shift now to recognizing that there is a need to let go, to get to high value insights, to ask more questions, to speak less. Countering that, I've seen since post-COVID, is actually people are more time poor, where you think the reduction in travel would afford people a bit more time and a bit more efficiency, but the opposite has kind of happened. It's almost like a justification that people have to be seen to be working, this almost lack of trust because you're working at home, which has meant people are more time poor and then can't do the high quality things that they need to do, which is a real shame. And I think if field medical excellence and people, senior medical leaders can understand that and create the right environment for people to operate in the right way to get them insights, I think, and have that long-term vision of the benefits of that, because this is a long-term vision, insights, isn't it? In terms of, you're not just ticking a box, you're finding out the next unmet need. I think for me, that's the answer. But you've got it's great to see this awareness emerging, but also you've got that countering mechanism, which is that time poorness increasing. Is that what you're experiencing as well? Is that what you've seen and heard from yourself and from other people?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And now it's probably getting back a bit more towards the face-to-face interaction, but I really saw that in the midst of COVID and right after COVID, where in the midst of COVID, the physician, of course, they interacted remotely, and it was totally affecting the the timing of those scientific exchange, but also when those scientific exchanges were happening. So it was either really early in the morning or really late in the evening, because in the middle they were so busy treating patients. I think it remained like that. Now it's tending to revert back to what we knew in the past, under an hybrid model. So yes, probably it has been very, very difficult to interact with HCPs back in time and in an hybrid model, knowing as well that there are sometimes some metrics associated with the MSL function, so number of interaction, and so which to my expertise is not indicative of a qualitative medical work. Like, it's not because you are having exchanged it with I don't know, 5 KOLs per day, which is impossible, but it's not because you have that that you'll bring quality to the table. So my advice would be to put different metrics to the medical work. So maybe having a percentage of insightful conversation or conversation with insight, rather than to focus on the number of interaction, which is, I think, a totally outdated metrics or KPI if you put target.
What else? You're moving to suggestions now, Pam, in terms of what would make that insight journey more robust. If, as well as the capabilities, what else would you? And you mentioned earlier the feedback loop, which we haven't really gone into. So if you could, another 2 things. We had a list of 3 things that we could share with our listeners to highlight, so they can help that medical research moving forward. What would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll sound like a broken record, but I think that processes and resources associated with the process are key, and then the capabilities. So the one shot versus what we were discussing earlier regarding the capabilities versus coaching with the behavior associated. I think that not only during coaching you can nurture some behaviors, but you can also reinforce some capabilities. Like,
so
you can.
Are you talking first line manager coaching capability? And
Yeah.
you also mentioned resources.
Yes.
So if we just go back to resources, if you had the right amount of resources, what is it you would do with them?
I'd set up some strong processes at the regional and global level, because that's what is often missing. So I think that the countries, they need to have those processes in place, because then they have their their local medical strategy that they have to apply and to put up some tactics around that. So regional and global functions are also having their processes. I think that now they are probably a bit more time consuming. So I would totally align the process between global, region, and countries, if possible, when needed, to impact even more the patient outcomes.
And is there something around that you were saying some of these local teams were setting up some great practices to make sure the inputs were better understood, better quality, had context? Is there something there around sharing best practice or aligning resources to ensuring, I know different things different local markets have different needs, but surely there's something generic in terms of behaviors and processes that are set up that can be shared.
Yes. I mean, very. I'll discuss about my own experience here, but we've been creating an insight generation community.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason why people could join was their interest in having more knowledge around insight generation.
Mm-hmm.
And we gathered a community of individuals coming from various regions, and they wanted to just share best practices. So that's how they are learning, and they are raising their questions. We created a repository so that people can exchange their documents, their processes. They are learning upon each other processes. So this is functioning very well. I'm getting lots of nice feedback out of this community. What I saw in other companies, and I think this could work, is to have an insights generation lead or head or function within medical. I know it exists within commercial. Like traditionally, it's coming from commercial. But I really think that if you put this function centrally, then this will per se enhance all your processes and capability building initiatives, because you have someone centralizing everything, who's the single point of contact, and not, one point of contact per therapeutic area. So you are, of course, this is one specific resource, but then eventually you are decreasing the cost of all the trainings that are taking place. You are decreasing the cost of, futility cycles or that are, taking place. So
I think what that resource would do, if you had the commercial type resource, somebody would be accountable for the quality of that process. And also, if you think about something that you said that you're doing currently, which sounds wonderful, which is not just sharing best practice, but taking some of those wonderful case studies and telling stories around that value cycle. So this is what you input. Working in field medical, this is where that information went. It was mixed in with other insights and other stories from other people, and this is what it meant. This is what it became, and that will really impinge on a value driver for people's purposes in their roles, and and that's better than any measure about how many KOLs you saw today. So yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. So it looks like we're out of time, Pam.
Yeah.
But I would really like to thank you for your time today. I know you're a very busy lady, and I think there's probably 3 or 4 more podcasts. We could have gone down any little avenue or rabbit hole there. But I think that's enough for now, and maybe we can speak at another time, and it would be lovely to explore some of those topics with you.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you for having me. It was a great discussion. I hope, I gave some answers, and if not answers, more questions. But questions are always good to have. So I'd be very happy to continue the conversation anyway.
Thank you. It was great to learn insights about insights, and I've learned something today. So thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you found it useful, please consider sharing with a colleague. To learn more about what we do or listen to further podcasts, please visit our website, vercium.com.